And we're back with, all right, hold on. It's episode 7 of For the Record podcast, and I'm here today with my father, Christopher Snyder.
What's up, yo?
And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the best shows we've ever seen and top 5 albums, maybe some honorable mentions of, I guess, all time or your favorite of all time. So, Dad, started out with some shows you've been to, because you've been to a lot over your
I have
years of life.
Over my half century plus of life, I've been to quite a few, and there's quite a few standouts. But I always start out with what kind of led me down the road. I mean, when I was raised in the 70s, and I had 3 older sisters and an older brother, and each had their own set of music they liked to listen to. My 3 sisters were in one room, and my brother and I were in another room. So my sisters were more of the pop, Motown, funky, soul. There used to be a radio station on AM radio called WIFL that we all kind of glued ourselves and listened to during the 70s. And then if you would go in my brother's room, he was really more of the, I want to say, what my father would call druggy music. He was more into Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Black Sabbath, Nazareth, ZZ Top. Some of these rebellious bands, which kind of fit him pretty well. So I had an eclectic mix of music to listen to, and I really loved it all. And I discovered the Beatles kind of by accident by my mother, who liked to listen to the Beatles. So WIFL would play Beatles songs, and she would always sing to them. And she also was a very decent guitarist and would sing a lot of the different songs, back in those days. So my very first concert that I went to was actually Beatlemania.
Really?
Because, the Beatles broke up by 1970. And so, I really loved the Beatles, and she knew it. And Beatlemania was a big thing back in the late 1970s, early 80s. And they put on this show. And, if you knew my mother was a pretty quiet woman, unassuming. And she went and got these tickets. She actually had to go to Philadelphia to get the tickets in those days from the Walnut Street Theater in Philly.
That's crazy.
And got the tickets, and it was my last present to open on Christmas Day. And I can't tell you one other thing that I got on Christmas Day other than those 2 tickets.
That's so awesome.
We took a bus from Vineland to Philly, to the Walnut Street Theater. We were up in the balcony, I remember it, and the Beatlemania went through all the changes that the Beatles went through over their decade of being together, from the early She Loves You era all the way into the Walrus and Sgt. Pepper's, and then eventually into Abbey Road. And it was just an amazing show, and the place was packed, and it was almost like being at a Beatles concert. And so I've always looked at that as my start of, my interest in going to shows and what that means. I was 12 years old, I think, when we went to go see that, And then, a lot of influential concerts, especially, over the years. I really didn't go to many shows much more after that because, we didn't have the money for tickets and things like that. But when you're 17 and you're driving and all your friends and, you just pick up tickets for a show. And back then you could get, standing room or balcony seats for $5, $10 to a show. I saw some very great progressive bands like Yes, Genesis. I saw bands like Led Zeppelin and, Rolling Stones, and probably, one of my favorites of the 80s was Billy Idol, if you can imagine that. Yeah. Billy Idol was really cool because my friend Pete, unfortunately, who's passed away, he was my concert buddy at a whim. He would say, hey, come over and meet me at the house, and I'd meet him at the house, and I'd think we were just going to have some beers or whatever, fool around. He'd say, "Oh, let's take a ride." And the next thing you know, we were headed over the bridge into Philly. And I'm like, "Where are we going?" And he's like, "Oh, we're going to go to Billy Idol show tonight." I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
And I remember the Billy Idol show pretty vividly because he was so late to come on the stage. And you know how, like, before the show starts, you know, they would play music, like background music. So there's just different music. And then all of a sudden the music would stop. And then so the place would be, you know, get rowdy. And then the music would start again. Well, the place, after an hour of this, started flipping out. Like, you know, people
typical
were throwing
Philly fashion
shit on the stage and just going nuts. When all of a sudden the music stopped and you heard, "What the fuck are you guys bitching about?" And it was Billy Idol, who was on the first balcony in a loincloth, and he swung down on a cord, tumbled onto the stage and into the drum kit, knocks that all over the place, and Steve Stephen, his guitarist, just rips into the beginning of a song called Rebel Yell by Billy Idol. You'd have to know it. It's just like was one of his killer songs. And he just got up with a gash on his head and just started singing. And I was like, yeah, you know, that's what it's all about. So, yeah.
That was crazy.
So, that you know, those were two of my most vivid memories of going to see a show. Because, you know, what's a show all about is all of the things that led up to the show.
Yeah.
The show, you know, it's just like your grandfather. You know, everything's about the gearing up. Yeah. You know, once you get to the show, you hope it's going to be great, but sometimes it's not as much as you picture it to be.
Yeah.
So those two shows were everything I wanted them to be, and I just didn't want it to stop. It just made you feel different about yourself and your outlook of the world, you know?
Yeah.
What about you?
I don't know. I would say probably for me, like one of my top shows would be seeing Balance and Composure, a band that like their music a lot of their music got me through high school, or a lot of their music I just attached to memories from high school and stuff. And I didn't get to see them live until their final tour. So their last show of the tour was actually in Philly because they're from this area. And so that was really cool. That was just like a really meaningful show to see, like this band that I've listened to for so long that I never got to see live, and then their last show ever, like I get to see. And that was just like a really cool moment because it was a sold out show. It was at the Fillmore in Philadelphia, and the place was packed wall to wall, and it was crazy. Like, and it just all these different people, like of all different ages too, like people who had been listening to them for a long time. Maybe they started listening to them like when they were a little bit older, like in college or something, and now, you know, 10 years later or so, whatever, like now they're at their last show ever, and it's just it was really cool to see like all these people come together for their last show, and they made like a whole tour documentary about that last show and everything, like in Philly and in the venue. And yeah, it was just it was really special, and like I knew all the songs and stuff, and so it was just really cool to see like that moment. And then I don't know, I would say like the Black Keys for me too. Seeing them was really cool with you.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Because I mean, again, it was a band that I've listened to for a long time that I actually never got to see live before, and so seeing them now was just really cool.
And again, the lead up, look at all the different things. You know, we got this set of tickets that had us up in the bleacher, and then I had an opportunity to get another set of tickets that put us lower.
Yeah, that was really cool.
The encore, people are leaving by the droves, and me and you scoot all the way down 30 feet from the stage, and we're like right on top of them. I mean, it was, you know, and it was a blistering finale. It was amazing. I had friends that were there were texting me like, "Are you watching this?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, yeah, it was just killer."
Yeah, that was really cool because, I've listened to them for so long, and just to see that live finally, and Dan Auerbach, and just like ripping and just going off. And then like one of my friends who was there, shout out Enzo, got me a guitar pick from Dan Auerbach because he waited around the back for Modest Mouse and them to come out. So that was really cool too. That was really nice. And so I have like a physical memory too, plus my t-shirt I got, but yeah, that's cool too. And I don't know, I guess like for me, the more valuable shows I've been to are like the small, you know, like 200 person venue where, you know, it's just more intimate rather than like a stadium show. And I don't know, I feel like a lot of people have only ever been to stadium shows in their life, so they don't really like know what that like general admission experience is like. And I feel like you have to just experience that at some point, like a small, like, you know, like some of my favorite shows were seeing like Pine Grove at the First Unitarian Church in Philadelphia. It's literally a church basement, and then like maybe 150 people could fit in that venue, tops. Like, and they're just in this church basement. There's no barrier or anything separating you from them. They're just on the stage in a church basement. Like, I don't know, it's really cool. Like, it's just cool to have those like intimate artist experiences too.
Yeah, I think
before
about
they
all
blow up.
the shows you went to before you even drove up in Sayersville.
Yeah, at Starland Ballroom. Yeah.
Yeah. You saw a lot of good shows up there.
Yeah, I saw The Story So Far there back in high school, and that's actually how I discovered Turnover, which is one of my favorite bands still to this day, and I've seen them multiple times, but I found them because they opened for The Story So Far, and I was like, hey, they're really cool. Like, I you know, if I like their music live, I'm sure I like their recorded music, so that's kind of how I found them. And I saw 21 Pilots there at Starland Ballroom when I was like 15.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that show, how great it was.
And it's just crazy now that 21 Pilots is like a household name. I feel like they're so big now. Everybody knows who they are, and they literally sell out shows. They headline festivals. Like, it's crazy. And, you know, I saw them in a 200-person venue when I was 15. Twice, actually. No, well, I saw them at Starland Ballroom, and I saw them at the Tower Theater, which I don't even think the Tower Theater is open anymore. I think they closed down last year or so. But yeah, I feel like it's always those small shows for me that are a lot more meaningful. Like,
no, I agree. And I
tours.
mean, how many times, you know, did we go see shows over at Penn's Landing?
Yeah,
I mean,
Actually, I was just telling someone
awesome
about that
venue.
the other day. I think I was telling Tom about it because, you know, it's just like the free block parties and stuff that 104.5 alternative radio used to put on. And, you know, I remember seeing, we went to the Fray and Neon Trees. I think you and Sam came on that one.
Show.
Yeah, that was so cool.
Yeah.
And like,
both bands were great, but the Neon Trees just brought it. I mean,
yeah, they
their
really
lead
had
singer
a good
had
live
such a great
presence.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just crazy because it was literally free, and it was just a really cool outdoor venue for anyone who's been to Penn's Landing. They know that's a cool place to be.
My favorite show I saw there, I actually saw Santana with the Lost Lonely Boys, and I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but you know my whole spiel about why I got disappointed in, you know, the 21st century, because the 2000s just don't promote any major guitar players. I mean, there are major guitar players, but it's just not part of the younger generation scene anymore, and I truly don't understand it, because I know when I do see good guitarists and they rip it like Dan Auerbach or whatever, the crowds go berserk for it.
So it's like, why is it not the...
Yeah, it's just not, why is it not prominent? And
I think it's probably just because there's so much to consume. Like, there's definitely still the subculture of people who are all about, like, that lead guitarist, and, you know, that's a majority of the music that they listen to or they seek out. But there's just so much to consume. There's so many genres that have developed now, so many mixes of genres, that, like, that's not the main thing in everybody's, I don't know, music taste, I guess, because so many people have such a, I guess, mix of taste now. I mean, I know you and I both, like, have a really varied, that's the word I'm looking for, a very varied taste of music, where we kind of just listen to everything. But I feel like there are those people who still are just kind of like in a box of, this is what I listen to. And like Sam, like my younger brother, he listens to rap exclusively. I will give him all the music suggestions in the world, and he will not take them because it is not rap, so he will not listen to it. He's just not interested.
However, and I'm not defending Sam in any way.
No, he does listen to stuff outside of rap.
Yeah,
but
and
like,
I can hear him sing songs that I know, and he'll know all the words to them.
He does, and he enjoys songs outside of rap. So it's like, I don't understand why he
It's just his go-to.
It's so reluctant to it.
Just go-to.
But like whatever. I mean, it's funny because I remember him texting me one time like, "Bro, why does Frank Ocean slap so hard?" or something like that. And I was like, "We've known this, Sam. Like Frank Ocean has been good. You just figured it out though. Like you just got there."
And and I will use a great comparison in that area. And I know we're digressing from the original thought, but when I was Sam's age, I was pretty, I was interested in other music, but I had to find it on my own. I didn't like people giving me suggestions all the time because I was very defensive about what I liked.
You like. Yeah. It's
interesting because, there was a time period where I listened to nothing but Genesis and Phil Collins songs. And if anything else was in that, like, what do you guys listen to that for? And, varied somewhat. But then I went away to the military, and I met a friend. His name was David Roach from South Carolina. And he was so into Prince and like an artist named Anita Baker, who she sings like, oh my gosh, I mean her voice is just heaven, and people like Morris Day and The Time, and all of these like R&B people who were just coming up. Like Prince really didn't have much that was out there yet. Before Purple Rain exploded, and he turned me on to them, and I started listening to it more because he was such a cool cat. He just knew everything about these guys, and he was a musician too and could play. And I'm so thankful for that experience because he took my closed-mindedness, which, because everybody was kind of like on the bandwagon of listening to that style of music, and I just was like, no. And because he was cool, and he'd be like, no, Chris, you gotta listen to this. Oh my God, listen to this jam. And then when I heard Prince like playing lead guitar, I said, who's playing it? He's like, that's Prince playing. And I was like, oh my God, that guy can rip. So Prince like kind of crossed the genre for me. Like I love the guitar heroes, and he was one at the same time and being this bluesy, funky cat, who had this James Brown shtick of dancing and singing, and, so it made me uncomfortable, and I liked it. I liked feeling uncomfortable. I liked that I was like, oh. So then I started to just explore many more different styles of music after that. So I have hope for your brother that, eventually he'll come around.
He'll come around. I know he does listen to other stuff. I mean, like, I know he's told me he likes some Billie Eilish songs, or I've heard him, when he gets down in the dumps, he's listening to Sam Smith and whatever else. But, rap is his go-to. I feel like that's his main.
I think another episode for you would be your go-to songs when you're depressed, because when you're depressed you always want to listen to depressing songs. So
I feel like that's too depressing in this time of life right now. I can't get into
So should we switch it up to albums? I mean,
okay,
because, I don't want your podcast to be too long.
All right, so we can go over to what would you say are your top 5 albums?
Well, I can't just give you my top 5 without telling you exactly why each one of them is my top 5.
All right, try to keep it somewhat
and I will.
condensed.
And they all have a story that go with them, of course. But when I think about the categories of my top 5 albums, they have to fit a certain criteria. One is, can I listen to that album back to back, and
I would say that's for mine too.
And I enjoy every song that's on it.
Yeah, all the way through.
Number 2, is the songwriting as well as the instrumentation. I mean, is the backup band that they have, or the band itself, multi-talented? Are the members all, able to contribute beyond just the lead person that's on there? Number 3, does it have durability? Can I listen to this album now that I'm in my 50s as well as when I was in my teens or 20s, and I still enjoy it the same way? So those were my 3 criteria.
That's good. Right? That's good.
So, and then each one of these has, a moment for me, because what led me to like them, and back in those days, obviously now you can buy just an MP3, a single song or whatever, and never hear the rest of the artists. People like you, I have faith in, because you hear a song and you're like, oh, I want to hear more. So you download their package and, so on and so forth. But back in the day, you bought the album. You bought the album for one song maybe, and then you listened to the rest through, and you usually found out that the song that they played on the radio was not your favorite.
Not the favorite, yeah.
Yeah, starting with Billy Joel's The Stranger.
I have that on mine, too. Yeah, I put that
I mean,
on mine.
It's so different than anything else that had come before it. Now, I put him in the same spectrum after that album of people like Bob Dylan and, John Lennon and, people who were exceptional songwriters. But he was, or is, an incredible musician. I mean, his musicianship, he was one of the very first that was able to put a piano back into rock and roll since really the 1950s. I mean, it was in the background
that old,
a lot.
Big band.
But you would find, singers and all from the 50s and the early 60s that the piano was integrated, and it kind of washed away and the guitar kind of took over, and he kind of brought the piano back into it, but there was also room for guitar and drums and horns.
Yeah,
horns,
I was going to say that's the major.
Yeah, so The Stranger definitely was top, and obviously my top song on that is Scenes from an Italian Restaurant.
Yeah,
but the story comes from me. I never even heard of Billy Joel until I was 12 years old, and you're in your roller skates, but the roller rink was the place to be when I was, 10 to 12, 13 years old. And, we would go there on a Friday night, and, there was a portion of the skate that was for couples only, and that was the time you could go ask that girl to go skate.
That's so funny.
And you held her hand and you skated while you were holding her hand. And my very first kiss from this, my very first girlfriend at the time, Dawn Blum, shout out to Dawn, who's still my friend to this day. But, we skated to couples only, and that's where we had our first kiss to, was Just the Way You Are.
That's
Stranger.
so funny.
Yeah, so that's album number one, and I could certainly go on and on and on, but we'll move on. Second one is Eagles' Hotel California.
I was gonna put that on mine too, but I
you had to
chose
have
a more modern
else,
album.
Of course, yeah. I mean, and the funny part is that Hotel California, the song, was my least favorite song growing up from that album. My very favorite song on that album was Life in the Fast Lane, because I just loved the guitar riff. But my mom's favorite song off of it was called New Kid in Town. It's a very,
I know that one,
mellow, bluesy, Glenn Frey song. But all of the writing on the song was the California scene, and it just, you would put it on, and especially a young teenager, kind of, your room is your sanctuary. I'd put it on, and I would just get transported to the California way, the California life. And I dreamed of being a Californian someday. That was my thought process. But obviously, the Eagles' writing combination of Frey and Henley was exceptional all the way. And eventually, it took me probably till my late teens to realize how great of a song Hotel California is.
Actually,
it's still my go-to song. I can listen to that anytime, anywhere, no matter what.
Yeah.
So Eagles, Hotel California, and the album's great from top to bottom because they brought in Joe Walsh, who was a very famous independent artist at the time, and he joined the band and he contributed songs on there. And I love a song he sings off of that album called Pretty Maids All in a Row. It's such a beautiful song, and he doesn't have an amazing voice, but he's an amazing guitarist. They were all extremely high on cocaine at the time, and I forgive them for all of the sounds and quirks, but they were all fighting with each other during this time. But it generated the best music there was. I mean, it's just hard to top it. Moving on, I would say Stevie Ray Vaughan's In Step, which is an album I can listen to cover to cover. I became a huge fan of the blues because of Stevie Ray Vaughan, and which led me to research all kinds of different blues artists that I got to see over the years. And I've got to see some incredibly amazing blues artists who were top of their game, like Buddy Guy, B.B. King. These guys I got to see in venues that were 200 people because it wasn't as popular then. When Stevie Ray Vaughan came out, he made an album called Texas Flood, which made a song called Pride and Joy, which got really popular airplay. But when this album came out, he was recovering from being a drug addict. He was on heroin for many years, and he used to, describe the feeling and he was amazing even then, but he couldn't remember any of it. He
Wow.
lost his way. And so he finally got clean. He made this album In Step, and the whole album's all about him getting cleaned up. And he wrote it himself, very little influence from others, and unfortunately died in a helicopter crash not long after it came out. I had 2 tickets that were pinned on my board in the Air Force that went unused because I was going to go see him at Tingley Arena in New Mexico when I was in the military, and just didn't happen. So,
Wow.
but I give credit to Stevie Ray Vaughan on that because he revitalized the blues in the early 90s. Moving on, I'd have to say Pearl Jam's 10.
I knew you were gonna
Definitely, Pearl Jam probably has become for a lot of people a specific taste of music, but that particular album when it came out set the whole grunge scene on fire, and some incredibly and talented artists came out of that Seattle sound scene. Great movie to see. I know you've never seen it. I think I've tried to get you to see it. It's called Singles. But that is about the whole grunge scene at the time. It's very funny. Matt Dillon is in it, the guy that plays in Something About Mary. So he's really great in it. He's like a grunge artist wannabe, but a lot of that grunge music is in there. Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam is in it. Eddie Vedder is actually in the movie. But when that album came out, it really reignited some Guitar Hero work. Mike McCready, who's their lead guitarist, was just phenomenal. And of course that led to, Nirvana breaking out and just so many great grunge bands. My last on my top 5 is probably going to shock you. Excuse me. But Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style. I know some people would probably say, "Are you kidding me, Chris?" But that, I always liked rap music in the 80s when it came out. I never really listened to like Public Enemy or NWA. They were like too political for me at the time. I wanted vanilla more than anything in my rap songs. So like Rum DMC was more, Houdini. These were the rap bands that I liked at the time. But when Snoop Dogg came out, and every other word was a curse word, and he was just laying it out, and the beats took me back to all that funkadelic music of my sisters when I was growing up, because he sampled all of that work. Dr. Dre did all of the production on that album, and it just one thing led into another, and it's still an album that I can go to all the time, that it cracks me, it just makes me laugh all the time because of the scene. It's very misogynist. It's not, I think meant to be serious. I think it was more in jest, than anything. But some people took it very seriously, and obviously, a lot of the explicit lyrics were not very kind to women at the time. But it's just an overall feel-good rap. And Snoop is cool, he's just a cool dude, and I love his staying power. He's managed to keep himself in the limelight just by smoking bud and dropping, a single here or there, or helping out on a song here and there. So Snoop Dogg, definitely, Doggy Style, it's the top one. My honorable mentions, and I won't get into why too much, but Elton John's Yellow Brick Road, definitely. Elton John was one of the first pop kind of rock and roll artists that I really, really liked.
Yeah.
My sisters turned me on to him. I will say Led Zeppelin 1. Little story to go with that. When I first went to college at Glassboro, I went and, didn't know who my roommate was going to be because I went in late my very first year of college, and Brian already had a roommate by then, so I ended up moving in with this guy, and I walk in, and I'm by myself. My mom and pop-up didn't move me in. I had to move myself in, do all that. Brought everything in my car, and I go into the room, and he's there with his 2 parents, and they're loving, and they're hugging him, and they're like, "Oh, hey, John, he's a good boy, did all this, that," and he's like clean-cut guy. So, and I'm like, oh boy, this is going to be great. And as soon as his parents left, he shut the door, and he turned to me and he locked it, and he went, do you get high? And I said, why, yes, I do. And he goes, let me introduce you to a friend. And he opens his closet. It's like one of those wah moments. And there's a 4-foot bong with a face of Abraham Lincoln in his top hat carved into the side of the bong. He goes, shall we begin? And that was how I met my roommate at the time. I'll leave my roommate's name out in case you're listening, JC. We're still friends to this day. But, so Led Zeppelin 1 was the first time I really listened to Led Zeppelin in full in an album, because we were so high. That's what my roommate put on in the background, and he just danced around and jammed out to it. So definitely Led Zeppelin all the way. And of course, my last one would be definitely Genesis. Too many albums to pick from Genesis, but I will pick one of their albums that was influential in the early 80s that you can listen to every song on it, and they're outstanding. It's Genesis, what some people call the Geometric Shapes. So many great songs on that. Mama, Home by the Sea, If It's Gonna Get Better, Legal Alien. I mean, just song after song was incredible, and they got a lot of airplay. So that's my top 5 with 3 honorable mentions.
They're good. It's in a wide range of taste.
So what do you got?
Okay, you're probably not gonna know all of mine, but
you can tell me.
I'll be somewhat quick with it, as I don't want this episode to get too long. But okay, so I put The Stranger on mine as well from Billy Joel, which, like, obviously you being my father, you can see where that direct influence comes from. Because that's, like, I feel like just growing up, that was a lot of what we listened to, dancing around, like, the computer room and, like, in the shed and stuff like that, when we dance in the garage and stuff. So and that's an album that I still go back to today and listen to all the way through, and I love every single song on that album. And okay, what else? I didn't really put these in like any particular order. It's just kind of what I like. Channel Orange, definitely by Frank Ocean, is one of my top. That's been one of my favorite albums since that album came out in 2012. I've been able to listen to every song all the way through, and that's an album I still go back to, and I can listen to all the way through. And it's a masterpiece. It's just like a story, and it's like, I don't know, Frank's storytelling is so great, and he's kind of like just very untraditional in his songwriting. He doesn't stick to the whole chorus verse kind of, whatever typical ABBA structure. He just does whatever he wants. Like Pyramids is a 9-minute long song on Channel Orange, but then he also has like a 1:30 song with John Mayer that's just a guitar interlude. Like there's just such a wide range of songs, but they all kind of come together in this one collective piece called Channel Orange, and it's great. And I love Frank Ocean, and Channel Orange is better than Blonde for anyone who wants to fight me on that one. I've also put Under Soil and Dirt by The Story So Far, just because that's an album that I listened to like nonstop in high school when it first came out in 2011. I think that was in middle school even I listened to that. And that, like, I listened to all the way through, and The Story So Far is still one of my favorite bands to this day. And that's an album that I'll put on if I'm in a bad mood or something and I just need to like get all my frustration out. Like I just put that album on and I like, go for a run or do something and just listen to that straight through. And I'm like, okay, all right, it's gone. Like the feeling of anger is gone. I got it out. I sang it out, and like it's good. And I don't know, I feel like I just have a lot of memories attached to that album just from seeing them so many times. And a lot of those songs just hold, like, I guess, specific memories to them. All right. And I also put Control by SZA. I don't know if you know that one either. Mm-hmm. But SZA is amazing, and she's such a talented singer, but also her lyrics are just awesome. Like, and, Control is all kind of, the whole album's about, like, being the side chick in a relationship, and she tells, like, this side of the story that I feel like a lot of like female artists aren't gonna portray in their music kind of thing of like being that side person in a relationship, and sometimes that happens. And I don't know, she shares a really interesting perspective, and it's a lot of her songs are really like female empowering songs and kind of taking control of that, being the side chick. Like she's like, I don't care that I am that, like, you know what I mean? Like I'm fine with it, and like this is on my terms too. Like it's not all the man's perspective. It's not all like he's in control of the title and like how I'm supposed to feel about this relationship. So that's a really good one. And she had a lot of popular singles come off of that album. The first single was Love Galore with Travis Scott, and that's kind of when I first like got into her. Even though she's been around for some years now, she's put out a lot of music. But Love Galore is what turned me on to her. And then she had Broken Clocks was a single, The Weeknd, and I feel like she had one more off that album that was a single. But yeah, she had a lot off of that. And then, of course, I said Lemonade by Beyonce, because that actually, it's the 4-year anniversary of it. It just came out, or... it was like just the other day.
It's been 4 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I remember when she dropped the whole visual album. Well, I didn't have Tidal at the time, so I couldn't really watch it. So I bootleg watched it. But the visual album, it was just crazy, and you know, the whole story of, you know, Jay-Z being unfaithful to her, and she made this album to kind of say, you know, I'm Beyonce. like, what are you doing? Like, what? Like, but also it's like a story of love and forgiveness and how they worked out their problems, and, you know, they're such a team that they were able to overcome the infidelity and, you know, come together and be even stronger in their relationship now that they've gone through these struggles. And it's also a lot about, you know, the struggle of the black woman, of police brutality. With Formation, you see a lot of that, and you know, the performance that she did for the Super Bowl that year when that album came out. And it's a very political album, also in the sense that it's about her relationship. It's also very political as well, and I appreciate Beyonce in the fact that she is at the top of the music industry, and everything that she has achieved, she has worked for herself and has gotten it herself based purely on her talent and her intelligence. She's so smart as a businesswoman, and I mean, just, I don't know, the way she markets herself, she doesn't even really have to, because she has a cult like following, but I mean, she has it for a reason. She's been around for like 2 decades now, almost. No, she has been around for 2 decades, more than that actually. Yeah, so it's just crazy that she just continues to top herself, like every time she does something new. It's
some artists have that staying power.
Yeah, it's so innovative and it's so creative, and she's definitely a very adaptive artist. She knows how to adapt with the times and change her sound with the changing like generations, and just, you know, the way the industry has changed. So for that, Beyonce, I will say my number 5.
Good choice.
Yeah, so I don't want to make this too much longer because we're already at like 40 minutes. But so I'll wrap it up. So this is episode 7 For the Record podcast. You can follow me on Instagram, like me on Facebook, check me out. And yeah, I don't know if I'm going to make this my last episode or not. I might do a quick little episode to wrap up the season, I guess you would say, before I present my final capstone project.
Aspirations.
My future aspirations? Okay, yeah. Maybe I'll make that my last episode, and I'll just do it by myself. Okay, yeah.
Well, thanks, Sarah, for having me on. You know, I've been asking you every week.
Yeah. Well, now that we're in quarantine, my dad is the only person I can see, so
I get to fill in. So happy.
So thanks, Dad. Thanks for being on it.
Sucker artists don't get to be on the show.
All right. And on that note, we'll end it.
Thanks, Sarah.
All right.